Good evening. Welcome to Let's Talk DMV on Diversity Today Media. I am Dr. Reggie Ratliff, and I'm happy to be here tonight, and thank you for joining us. Please allow me to take a moment to introduce my co-host, my co-laborer, my co-facilitator, and investment advisor, Terrence Hollingsworth. Terry, are you there?
How's it going, Dr. Ratliff?
I'm excited, man. Another day, another push, another opportunity to give a voice to those who are doing great things in the community.
Yes, sir. We had some important legislation that passed yesterday, the Inflation Reduction Act, and I don't know. What do you think about it?
I think it's a great opportunity. We are living in a time of inflationary periods. We are starting to see the impact of the initiative and implementation of it by just looking at the drop in food prices and gas prices, and it just shows that there's opportunity that efforts are being made, at least from the outside looking in, with the Biden administration and the bipartisan effort to try to get legislation passed that's going to eliminate the inflationary period that we're in existing right now.
Yeah, the thing that's really interesting, the thing that we should keep in mind as investors is that inflation is a function of kind of our spending, right?
Exactly.
And it doesn't matter, it matters in terms of what I want to say, gas prices, food prices, and things like this. But ultimately, what's going to matter the most is whether or not we put some money to work in the stock market, um, whether we understand that dollar cost averaging is a thing that matters, because you don't see the bottom, nor do you see the top. But if you're invested in the market, you capture those important gains, and before you know it, you have some money in the bank. And so, go ahead.
That's why it's so important that we really try to empower and enlighten those who are in the market of investing and learn a little bit more about what we're teaching in our virtual class through our master finance class that's held every Thursday from 5:30 to 6:30 p.m. Central Standard Time. We talk about things such as this. We talk about, the different type of investment, the vehicles, how it impacts gross domestic product. We talk about the recessionary period. We talk about inflation. We run a gamut and answer questions, and it turns into, fruitful conversations and lend opportunity for others to join us on this, this class and discussion. Every single week, we've been doing this now, running consecutively, 3 years now? We've been doing this
Yep.
over 3 years now. So there's always something to talk about in terms of investments.
Yeah, and the thing that's really important, right? That if you look up the makeup of our cap class, it is the people that you think that are getting a handle on. They're educated, they have advanced degrees, they're decision makers at their jobs, and yet they're financial illiterate, right? They're
Right.
still, they're not growing their net worth in the way that they feel like they should have. They don't have the financial independence that they thought they were going to have. And
Mm-hmm.
so now they're here to say, what do I do so that my kids are not going to get there and be in the same place? And so,
Yeah.
if you're interested in investing, if you're an investor, you should come on and talk with other people that are investing money, and just have robust conversations, because that's the only way that we're going to get there. Um, you see the website. So if you're interested, please ask for the link to come on and join us.
Absolutely. And as you see there, sratliff68 at yahoo.com. Send me when you email me and, you know, let me know that you're interested. I'll respond with a link to access the class. And the hour goes by very fast, just so you know.
Yeah. So we have Councilwoman Selonia Miles today. One of her platforms is economic development. So I'm going to be interested to hear her take and some of the things that she's doing in regards to that as well.
Absolutely. So when we talk about the DMV, for those out there who are viewing us tonight and don't know exactly what the DMV is, the DMV is DC, Maryland, and Virginia. It's a small region where you can literally walk from one area from DC to Maryland, other side to Virginia, and there's a lot that goes on at the same time. Many residents who live in the DMV are from different areas, but we have one young lady tonight, as Terry mentioned, who's a councilwoman. Her name is Selonia Miles. Miss Miles is from Philadelphia. She hails from Philadelphia, but she attended Georgetown University in Washington, D.C., where she received a bachelor's degree in social and public policy. She's also received a certificate from Virginia Commonwealth University in Richmond, Virginia, a minority political leadership institute class of 2014. Also the 2017 Emerge cohort and a 2018 graduate of the Partnership and Policymaking cohort for the Virginia Board for People with Disabilities. Councilwoman Miles in July 2020 partnered with the Training Alumni Association, a grassroots advocacy organization, compromise of graduates of the Partners in Policymaking and Youth Leadership Academy programs, which is funded by the Virginia Board for People with Disabilities, commemorating the 30th anniversary of the ADA, Americans with Disabilities Act, and successfully worked with members of the General Assembly to prioritize the disability community within the state code. And without further ado, I would like to introduce Madam Councilwoman Selonia Miles. Are you there?
I am here. Thank you so much for that introduction. How are you?
I'm well, thank you. Good to have you on the podcast tonight.
Oh, glad to be here. Glad to be here. Thank you for having me. And also, I want to thank you for the work you're doing in the community to empower our communities of color and just to act as an inspiration policy wise. So, thank you so much for your work that you're doing.
It's my pleasure, and thank you as well for the work that you're doing, not only for the town of Dumfries, not only for the Commonwealth of Virginia, but the impact it does have on the Black community nationwide. So, iron sharpens iron, as I always say.
Absolutely. Absolutely.
Speaking of which, you came from a state where iron has been very fruitful to build buildings, tall buildings in cities of Pittsburgh and your hometown of Philadelphia, correct?
Correct. That is absolutely correct.
Yes. Go ahead.
Okay. Yeah. Yes. I'm a proud Philadelphian. We have a rich history of building. We have a rich history in union building, which has led to economic empowerment for the middle class. And so I have that rich background as well.
Absolutely. And if I'm not mistaken, it didn't mention in your bio, but I'm just kind of, assuming that because you are from the NFC, the National Football Conference, being a Philadelphia Eagle fan, you probably also was a Chicago Bears fan because, everybody in the world is from
See, you didn't have to choose violence. It's clear you started this interview to choose violence. Like, I mean, you're not a Celtics fan and you're not a Cowboys fan, so we didn't have to do this. But
wow.
Now we have to go there.
Say, go back. Look, we won't mention the Cowboys out here in the DMV because, the Washington, formerly known as Redskins fan. What are they called now?
Child, I don't know.
Right. Nonetheless, we digress.
Yeah, let's leave it alone.
Let's keep it moving forward. So, growing up in Philadelphia, talk a little bit about that in terms of, any challenges you may have faced, your goals and ambitions to move forward in your journey as a child in Philly and moving forward as you approach adolescent years and adulthood years.
Okay. Well, growing up in Philly, I was very blessed because we had a strong sense of community and my parents were very active in our community. My father was also a block captain. So he was a liaison between the people in the neighborhood and the mayor's office. So when we needed things, I saw from a very early age how policy affects your local neighborhood. So my mother also was very active in the community. She actually started a workshop in the community for kids to teach basic reading and math skills so that they were prepared in school, so that she focused not only on younger kids, but older kids that didn't have those skills. Fantastic. So they could graduate. Yeah. And it was at our local community church. So she did that every Monday, Wednesday, and Friday until we moved down here. That actually... Our advocacy had to shift because my father was a full-time employee for the Philadelphia Naval Shipyard, and there was a BRAC realignment that took place in '95, I believe. And when that happened, many of the civilian employees were found jobs other places, which that is what brought us here to Quantico, Virginia. And Quantico is right outside of Dumfries. So once we moved here, we got involved in our local Salvation Army. My father was in charge of a group called the Adventure Corps, which mentored young boys for him to go out in the community and do great things. But one thing I will notice, the difference in Philadelphia was having access to opportunities.
Mm,
One thing about the DMV, what separates us from that is that there's always access. There's always things that we can tap into. And
mhm.
so what my parents really did, they instilled on me early on, is you have to bridge those gaps in your community to provide access so that people can benefit from them and we can have health.
Absolutely. Well said. So the seed was planted in your life at an early age in terms of just giving back civically and socially and things of that nature.
Absolutely, absolutely. My parents were very strict. Not only my parents, my grandparents.
Mm,
And they let us know, look, if you are not involved in making decisions that impact you, somebody else is making those decisions for you.
absolutely.
Because these decisions are going to be made. So even from a young child, they taught us to advocate for ourselves in the school system if it was something
Yeah.
that we wanted to see.
Mhm.
I wanted a newspaper when I was in elementary school. So I
Wow.
started a campaign so that we have a school newspaper. Yeah, I
Right.
found out the proper channels and say, okay, this is what we need so that we can reach out to
Wow.
individuals in our school so that we know what's going on. When is the basketball team playing? When is
Right.
the SGA
Right.
going to meet? Do we
Right.
have this? And so my parents were very key in instilling you have to be involved in the decisions that impact you. If
Mhm.
not, you have somebody that knows nothing about what you're going through making
Right.
decisions for you. So yeah, the seed was planted early. We also were there are five of us. So when I say we, I'm talking about my brothers and sisters.
Sure.
And so we were also instilled that it was our responsibility to get back and pull somebody else along the way that didn't have
Mhm.
the access that we
Mm,
had. One thing we benefited from, my father worked very hard. He worked 2 or 3 jobs. I don't know.
right.
But when we were in Philadelphia, we did go to Catholic school. So we had access to the
Wow.
best education that they
Yeah.
could provide. When my mom said, well, that's not enough that my kids are getting a good education. I got to do something in this community for people who don't have access because that point is
Mhm.
very expensive. So we
Yeah.
had to make sure we were doing for the community because we weren't winning until the whole community is winning. None of us is winning until we're all
Absolutely. That's what I admire about the city of Philadelphia, city known as brotherly love. And it's more than a notion. It's more than just a saying.
winning.
I found that when visiting Philly, people did, really cared about you and, they really motivated you to reach your fullest potential, the schools as well. And family, just the family units in Philadelphia overall, was all about family structure. And they meant it that a family that prays together and works together stays together and they progress together and that makes
Yeah.
a community grow together. So
Yeah, absolutely. And I think, excuse me, absolutely. And I think one thing Philadelphia instilled in me, and I take it with me everywhere I go, is don't talk about it, be about it.
that's
There's
right.
plenty of places where, there's kindness and people see that you're in a situation and you're like, they're like, okay, well, yeah, I'm sorry you're going through this and we're going to pray for you.
Right.
In Philadelphia, we see a situation, we figure out what the solution is, and then we
Mhm.
implement that solution. Now, we get a bad rap. People want to talk about
Mhm.
going Santa Claus and things of that nature. But the
Mhm.
reality is we're going to do what we can to help our fellow residents, our fellow citizens, our neighbors, and our
Yeah.
friends. So,
Well, it's kind of like, if somebody is starving, people are asked, for food or whatever case may be, don't lecture them.
mhm.
You feed them first, then you give it
Right.
to them. You
Yeah,
know?
don't pray for me, feed me.
Yeah. So let's move forward. You here in the DC area, the DMV, and you attended Georgetown University, a prestigious university, not just here on the East Coast, but nationwide. Is so high level academics. What was your motivation for getting involved with politics?
Oh,
You know,
that's a good question. Thank you for asking it. So like I said, I graduated from Georgetown University. I was actually a single mother, and I had a child with special needs.
mm,
And what I found out in the beginning of this journey is that it was going to take a lot of doctor's appointments. It was going to take a lot of therapy. And honestly, at that point, I wasn't making ends meet. I was working full time, but it just wasn't there.
mm,
And so, though we had insurance, there were caps on everything. There were
mm,
caps and there were limits on how many times we could go to certain specialists. There were limits on how many times we could go to see my son's speech therapist and his occupational therapist. And
right.
so, at that time, they were recommending that he needed those therapies at least 3 times a week.
Mm,
Well, the insurance company at that time was only authorizing half that, a little
Mhm.
less than half that, I believe.
Mhm.
And so that all changed one day when a law called the Affordable Care Act was signed into
Yes.
law. And so,
Yes. Thank you,
and so
President Obama.
amen, amen. And so the ACA was signed into law, and a lot of people think about it in terms of it expanded access to healthcare. But not only did it do that, it eliminated pre-existing conditions.
Right.
It no longer, there was no longer a cap on how many times you could access certain therapies or see certain physicians, and it's the things that they were getting away with prior to that.
Yeah.
So all of a sudden, my son I wasn't, robbing Peter to pay Paul to get him to his therapy. I wasn't doing those things, and he had everything he needed
Mhm.
medically wise. And then in 2012, there was this great big campaign that we're going to overturn the ACA, and I was like,
Wow.
I know what you're not going to do.
Right.
And
Yeah.
so
Right.
I was like, oh, what do I have to do to make sure that doesn't happen? And I
Mhm.
was like, okay, so if all that means is that I need to go out and talk to my neighbors and make sure they go vote so that my son can continue to get the therapy he needs, not just my son, but all kids that were in that situation,
Absolutely.
then I'm going to talk to whoever I need to talk to to make sure we keep this. And
Yes.
at the conclusion of that campaign, I became a member of the local Democratic Party, and I got very involved in that aspect.
Mhm.
And that's when I started seeing how things impacted us locally. And then my advocacy shifted into the school system. It's like,
Mhm.
okay, who's making the decisions and turning IEPs?
Right.
Let me explain what that means.
Right.
So
Yeah. Yeah.
some of us in our communities we use acronyms.
Right.
The individual education plan.
Mhm.
So who's making these decisions? Who's determining what our kids can access in the school system? Does the school have the resources it needs? Who do I need to talk to?
Mhm.
So I started working with education. That shifted my focus. And I'm like, okay, well, what else is going on in my community that I need to be talking to
Right.
somebody about?
Nice.
And it's just like there's no businesses here, there's no programs for our kids. What's going on? And I developed a relationship with a mentor of mine, um, Councilman, well, actually then Vice Mayor Willie Tony.
Mhm.
And I was like, okay, well, so how can I help? How can I get involved to make sure we're bringing the things to the community that this community needs?
Mhm.
And what happens is a reward, like my dad says all the time, the reward for good work is more work.
Mhm.
So his position was, okay, well, you need to go on this planning commission. And so
Yes. Yes.
he was like, and that was a commission that was responsible for making zoning decisions that impacted your local community. Most communities
Mhm.
have those.
Yes.
So then after serving on the planning commission, I decided that I was ultimately going to run for office. So here
Wow.
I am today.
Very nice. Very, very path. You blazing a trail. And most importantly, you were focused. And
Mhm.
so you should be commended as far as that's concerned and showing the diversity of skills that you have. And it kind of extension from they call it Obamacare, but also the Inflation Reduction Act, which extends Obama's protections to 2024. So, we see those type of initiatives that were implemented and, great politicians who focused on community,
Mhm.
and I can attest that you're not one of those politicians in the DMV who come to churches at the end of your term talking about, I want to run for reelection. Would you vote for me? You're actually out there grinding,
Mhm.
and pounding the pavement on a regular basis, regardless of the season. So, you're to be commended for that. So I want to ask you, as far as how we're looking, you mentioned zoning, in Dumfries, in the town of Dumfries. Which is what the oldest, second oldest town in Virginia. The old,
We are the oldest continuously chartered town in the Commonwealth. So yes, we are the
okay.
oldest.
So great history, great history. But the pendulum is swung. Dumfries is growing, and it's a lot of positivities coming out of that town, and we have great leaders such as yourself who is a councilwoman and great initiatives. What does the future look like for Councilwoman Selonia Miles in terms of the African American area in Dumfries and just Prince William County in totality? Because you're more than just Dumfries, because you engage with other leaders, county board supervisors and things like that. You know, what does this look like for you?
So when we talk about economic empowerment, the most important piece that is missing from that is correcting systemic injustices that have taken place.
Mhm.
So when we look at policies, we have been very deliberate, and I have to credit the entire council because it's been a group effort. We've been all on the same page and making sure this community is uplifted. So I have to shout out Mayor Derek Wood, Vice
Yeah.
Mayor Nickerson,
Yes.
Councilwoman
Absolutely.
Neville,
Yes.
Councilman Brian Fields, Councilman Sean Pete, Councilman Tyrone Brown. I think I got all y'all. Don't, but it's really the entire council. It's been a group effort. And one thing that we did is that we had to address the fact that our community did not have access to quality jobs. And that's key. In Northern Virginia, you're not going to make it unless you have that access. So we were
Yeah.
very deliberate in our zoning and in how we're building up the town of Dumfries. So we adopted a slogan that we were going to make Dumfries a destination town, because it was a time people would just drive through the town of Dumfries
Yeah.
and it's on their way to somewhere else.
Yeah.
So we were like, what can we bring to Dumfries that will increase our economics here, but also give our residents opportunities? So once we decided we were going to be Destination Dumfries and we weren't just going to be a place to drive through, but to drive to, we developed a partnership with Colonial Downs, which brought initially Rosie's, which was a project that brought over 200 quality jobs that started at, I believe, 50,000 a year at that time, and included health benefits, and that brought them within a walkable distance in the community. So if you're somewhere where you don't have access to transportation, where you're not driving, well, here's Rosie's, which is right here, and you can walk to work and earn a quality living and maintain your quality of life. That led to what we have now, a project that's going to be coming in this year, the Rose, which is a resort and gaming facility that is going to bring, initially it will bring about 1,200 jobs when you talk about construction and the building of the project, but ultimately it's going to lead to about 700 full-time paying jobs that are full-time with benefits and with potential for growth. And in addition to what we got with that is we talk about green space and things of that nature. We got over 20 acres of green space that's going to be converted into parks for our community. We're going to have amphitheaters and things of that nature. So we're doing that. We're providing economic development that we need. We're also providing things that our citizens need, quite frankly, high quality dining, high quality hotels and things like that right here in the town of Dumfries. So to get to that point, we first had to review the zoning and make sure and see what was keeping these projects out of here.
Right.
And what can we do to bring them here? Because this is how our people are going to flourish.
Absolutely. So in regards to that, as far as the huge construction and everything taking place, is there minority presence as far as minority contractors that is contributing to, the workforce or to the redevelopment of the town of Dumfries?
Yeah, absolutely. So with this particular project, the Rose, their Colonial Downs had an entire office dedicated to minority contracting and things of that nature. So yes, absolutely.
Fantastic. That's good to know. Now, in terms of the growth of Dumfries, Councilwoman Miles, so during this growth, because things can happen in communities economically really fast, sometimes real fast, you don't have a long-term plan. What is the board's plan, long-term plan, including, Mayor Derek Wood, who's African-American, by the way, in terms of moving Dumfries forward? That will include a minority presence going forward, economically at least.
Well, the town of Dumfries is already largely minority, so we're not really a minority, and people of color are the majority in this town of Dumfries.
Right. So the minority majority, right?
Yes. Yeah. So, and that's been the case at least since I've been here. So most of what was the second part of the question? How are we going to build?
To continue engaging, African Americans beyond just this project to, increase short term, but long term, once everything is settled, Dumfries is expanded. How will we continue to have minority presence in terms of employment and economic development in the town of Dumfries to be part of?
Well, we're going to continue to do the things that we're doing right now. We're going to continue to reach out to the community and empower them. We're going to continue to bring opportunities to the community that empower communities of color and otherwise. We're going to, one of the things that we are leading up to is that the dredging of Quantico Creek, which will bring Dumfries as a waterfront. There was a time that Dumfries rivaled Alexandria in terms of ports, but the water was never dredged. So that part stopped. As we work on that, we're going to be working with our state and federal elected officials in order to make sure that we have that happen, which will bring even more opportunities for people of color to get involved with the building and the creation of that. So that's one thing that we're focusing on next.
Fantastic. What about the workshops for returning citizens, to have them engage, as it relates to Dumfries?
Okay, that's a good question. That's a good question. So those are going to be projects that we're going to be looking at doing as individual council members. It's not necessarily a town
Okay.
effort. But I will say this: we have all used our platforms in order to empower members of the community. I was very proud to work with Vice Mayor Nickerson recently, back in March, and we did what's called as an expungement clinic.
Hmm.
So what that is that the General Assembly had allowed for certain offenses that appeared on your record to be expunged, so they no longer held you back from access to employment, access to housing, and things of that nature. So we held a first of its kind one stop shop, and we brought all the key individuals in the expungement process under one building, and we had them available for our people. So a process that's very confusing, we were able to make it simplified and bring in the community. And we're going to do more things like that in order to
Fantastic.
make sure that we're reaching everybody. We are also very proud because that is now being modeled and people are doing it all over the Commonwealth because we started it here and it's just going to
Hmm.
continue to grow. So we're going to
Very
be
good.
doing things like that for returning citizens and
Yes.
things of that restoration of rights and things of that nature as
Yes.
well.
Beautiful, beautiful. So as we start to wind down this podcast, again, thank you for taking time from your busy schedule to talk with me this evening. What does the future look like, as far as political career? Do you plan to run for reelection when it comes? Do you plan on seeking higher office? What say you?
Okay, good question. I am running for re-election. I'm currently going to be on the ballot in November. I look forward to everyone's support. You can check me out at seloniamiles.com. Shameless plug. uh,
Yeah. Hey, it's called
and
that.
as far as running for higher office, right now I have made promises that I want to make sure I have fulfilled prior to moving on. So right now I'm focused on the town of Dumfries and making sure I deliver. I
Yes.
ran on a platform of diversity and inclusion, and I've started that. We've seen that. I ran on a platform of making sure we empower our citizens, and we're going to make sure that we continue to do that. So right now I'm focused on making my community what it needs to be and
Yes.
providing my service in that sense. And I have not thought about higher office. Right now, there's no higher office than being right where I grew up
All right.
and serving the people here. So,
Okay. That sounds good.
but talk to me in 10 years or whatever. We'll see.
10. We gotta wait 10 years. Oh my goodness. I think Dumfries would be real good shape by 10 years. Nonetheless, I want to give you a final statement. I want to give you the stage, and I yield the rest of my time for this podcast for you to speak out to your constituents and anyone else you want to reach out to.
Okay. Well, thank you so much. Again, thank you for having me. Thank you for the work that you guys are doing with this podcast that we can reach other communities. I want to thank the people of Dumfries for allowing me to serve you. And I get great feedback, and I want you to know I'm open always. If you have any questions or concerns, I'm very accessible. Please reach out to me. We're going to continue to serve you in these capacities, and I look forward to serving you for many years on ahead.
Wonderful. Well, Councilwoman Selonia Miles, we thank you for joining our podcast this evening. And it was a pleasure speaking with you tonight. We do hope that everyone had a chance to hear Councilwoman Selonia Miles during this podcast. Terry, you there?
Yes, I am.
Very productive conversation. She hit on a lot of great points, particularly in terms of the impact of minority participation in the economic growth of the town of Dumfries.
Absolutely. I am excited to talk to her some more because the expungement is one thing, but
Mhm.
hopefully they'll start to think about some of the ban the box legislation that when returning citizens are coming back, um, you know, not allowing corporations or
Right,
employers
right.
to ask about their criminal record without
Mhm.
offering them a job,
Right,
right?
right.
And we passed that last year in Iowa. We got it was upheld by the Supreme Court. That
Mhm.
came down on Juneteenth of 2021. So that was a great victory here in
Yes,
Iowa for returning citizens, and hopefully that will kind of take care, spread throughout the country because at the end of the day, they're coming back. They need some place to go. They need
absolutely.
some place to work. or guess what? They're going to be robbing and stealing, and nobody wants that for them or our communities.
Absolutely. And it certainly they should be included in this expansion, again, economic development. And so, we'll see how it goes. Certainly, Councilwoman Miles is welcome to return to the show prior to her reelection bid in November, just to give us updates and, how things are progressing in the town of Dumfries, right?
Yep, absolutely.
So that's it for us this evening. Thank you for joining us. Like us on Facebook and YouTube. Um, We are thankful again for Councilwoman Selonia Miles joining us tonight. I am Dr. Reggie Ratliff. Thank you for tuning in on Let's Talk DMV on Diversity Today Media. Have a blessed night and be safe.